Why hello there, and welcome back to Some Weirdo on the Internet Reviews Obscure Role-Playing Games, the series with an unnecessarily long title that I have to say at the start of every episode. And in this episode I will be taking advantage of interest in an upcoming game and talking about the first game, which was based on the same IP, because that's how you get the clicks. Aliens Adventure Game was released in 1991 by Leading Edge Games and is mostly based on the 1986 film Aliens. But can this game manage to capture the kind of horror sci-fi action for which the first two Alien films are so well known? Let's find out. Players in Aliens Adventure Game take on the role of colonial marines, doing colonial marine stuff like keeping peace in the galaxy and being put in mortal peril due to various Weyland-Yutani shenanigans. So let's get into this and make ourselves a character. Character creation begins by generating 5 primary attributes by rolling 3d6 twice and taking the higher result. Next, secondary attributes are generated similarly, but with only one roll each. Next, we roll on a couple of tables to determine the character's education and social background, which may provide a number of merit points, which are also given for high attributes, and determine which branch of service the character qualifies for. Then we determine the character's learning roll, which determines their ability to learn or improve skills, and generate their skills, active duty history, and other values by consulting many tables and rolling many dice. After that, we just need to select the character's equipment, and we are done. And that's about it. Honestly, I'm kind of meh about the whole thing. Like, there's an okay level of detail in the character backgrounds, but it relies really heavily on random generation, although there is an optional point buy system. But it also feels a bit less like making a character and more like having a character generated for you and occasionally putting in a little bit of input. Now, my biggest complaint here is the learning roll, which is a fairly difficult roll to make. In the case of our example character, it was roll equal to or under 14 on a percentile roll. And during character creation, you need to make that roll to increase any of your skills beyond the level where you have a -4 penalty as your modifier. So like a character with a bad intelligence or motivation score can pretty much end up unable to learn or advance any of their skills without some really lucky rolls. Once again, from the sample character, I only succeeded in 2 out of 29 learning rolls that I made to increase my skills. And yeah, normally I try and be all objective and whatnot, but honestly, I just don't like this character creation system. The only real decisions that you make in terms of customizing your character are choosing which skills to attempt to increase, and depending on how you roll your background, you might not even have that option. Also, the other character backgrounds that the game is advertised to have consist of use the Colonial Marine background and make a character who was in the Colonial Marines, but they just left. Or just kind of pick a few skills and it'll probably all work out fine. So yeah, there is nothing here that I really like, so 2 out of 5. So the basic mechanic in Aliens Adventure Game is a simple-ish 3d6 roll-under system. So let's just say our character wants to use some computer systems. What we would do is look up our modifier relative to our rating in the skill, and then go to another table to find the base odds for the difficulty of the task being done. Then you add those two values together to get your base odds. And then we roll the dice and fail because you have less than a 10% chance of succeeding on an average difficulty task with a novice rating. And remember, due to the learning roll, novice is what most of your skills are going to be at. Of course, this whole roll under 3d6 thing kind of goes out the window when we get into combat, which is a bit more involved. So I guess let's get into that situation. Well, it seems our character has tracked down that sneaky Weyland-Yutani operative who let a bunch of aliens loose for some nefarious reason or another. It's well past time for discussion, though. It's time for violence. First, we look up the pulse rifle to determine the shot accuracy bonus relative to action spent. And according to that, by spending 4 combat actions, we get a +2 shot accuracy bonus, which is then added to the skill rating modifier for an overall shot accuracy of -2. Next, the shot accuracy is referenced with the range on the odds of hitting table to find the target number for the attack roll, and then the dice are rolled. And a success! After that, we roll on the hit location and damage table to determine the hit location, a shot to the heart, and a lucky roll for once. But before we determine damage, we need to look up the glancing modifier for the specified armor and hit location, and then make a glancing roll, and then reference the damage. And he is very dead. And that's basically it. Fighting a xenomorph is more or less the same thing, except that you roll on one of the alien hit location and damage tables. And of course, because they don't have guns, the aliens roll on one of the melee hit location and damage tables. There are a lot of tables in this game. But for the most part, that's it. There's some more stuff like dealing with automatic fire and damage, which can range from 1 to 80,000. It's a whole weird thing, and I can't get into everything and still keep this video a reasonable length. So overall, the mechanics are clunky and overly complicated, and don't really fit in with the atmospheric action of the film. Like, yeah, I know games from around the time have a tendency to be a little on the rules-heavy side, but this is just kind of ridiculous. You have to make a minimum of 3 rolls and reference 2 tables to make a single attack, which might do no damage, and it might instantly kill the opponent, depending on how you happen to roll on the hit location table. And the stuff that actually is good here is lost to all that randomness, like having the ability to attack an opponent's limbs to disable them, which would be a good tactical decision, but random hit location table. And just like character creation, it feels a little bit more like you're just the human computer executing all the functions via dice roll to come up with a random result rather than, like, you know, playing a game. And I realize that I've talked almost entirely about the combat system, and that's because there's so little to the out-of-combat actions that they're not really worth discussing. I explained them fairly briefly at the beginning of the section, and that's about it. It really just kind of feels like it's a combat simulation game that they put a thin veneer of role-playing on to market it more as a role-playing game, but, like, that combat simulation game at the core just isn't that good to begin with. So 2 out of 5 for the mechanics. It is a fully functional system, but that's kind of the only thing that's fun about it. Alright, so I have been going a little hard on this game, so I will say this. It is fairly well written. Despite the complexity, the rules are clearly explained and relatively easy to understand, and throughout it kind of feels like they actually care about writing things in such a way that they are informative and interesting and help to transport you to the universe of the Alien films. There is, however, a slight air of smug superiority surrounding the discussion of their mechanics, which are apparently so great, according to them. But if I took points off for smug superiority, pretty much nobody would be getting any points for writing. So even though I don't really want to do it, I am going to give them a 4 out of 5 for writing because they wrote the book very well. So this book is laid out a little oddly, with the main text in one large column and a smaller one on the outside containing the section headings, and quotes from the film Aliens. Like, a lot of quotes. The only illustrations are captures from the film, which do look nice, but does mean that anything that did not appear in the film does not get any kind of illustration. Overall, it's okay, just okay. I like the general layout, it looks pretty nice, but all of those quotes just kind of feel like they're there to break up the white space in the second column. So 3 out of 5, it is professionally done throughout, just not really all that impressive. This book pretty much gives you everything you need to play a game in the world of the Aliens films. Well, the first 2 Alien films, no dog aliens or predators or anything like that. And they do even, add some new stuff. There is a lot of information provided on, the worlds you may visit and, what the Colonial Marines do, and just, what all the equipment is, and stuff like that. There is also an adequate selection of equipment and vehicles and vehicular combat rules and NPCs and a whole section on the titular aliens. You know, all the good stuff that you should expect to have in a game like this. I will say though, my biggest complaint with the content is this. As stated, they added new stuff. They added several new alien life forms, and they don't really go into much detail on them. There's some, but I would have liked more information on the things that are unique to this game. Yeah, xenomorphs are cool, but other aliens could be cool too, and could still reasonably be a part of the Aliens adventure game. There can be all kinds of aliens. And unfortunately, the complexity of the system doesn't really lend itself to user-generated content if you wanted to put in your own aliens. Or predators. So basically, all of the stuff that you need and would kind of want is there, but there's really no cherry on top. There's nothing that really says, here is some extra stuff for you to enjoy with your gaming experience. So 3 out of 5. And there we have it. Aliens adventure game. A clunky, overcomplicated mess that does a pretty good job adhering thematically to the Alien films, although not doing so well to capture the tone of them. Honestly, it seems like the kind of thing that might be fun, once, but after that, the novelty of rolling on all the tables would just kind of wear off fairly quickly. It's kind of too random and doesn't have enough strategic elements to be a really good war game, and it's also too heavy and clunky to be a good role-playing game. So it's just this thing kind of existing between the two genres in its own little space, and it's just not a very good space. Alright, thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, then you should hit all of the lovely buttons, and if there are any games that you think I need to look at, you can tell me about them in the comments. And if you would like some more obscure role-playing game reviews, you can check out my blog, where I do this whole basic thing, but in a written format. There's a link to it in the description. Well, until next time.